Okay, hopefully I can condense this little topic I've been wanting to work on and do a video on for the past few days this week. Hopefully I can condense it down to a little shorter than it's usually been. But let's put it to you like this. WWE, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, whether you're a fan of the current storyline or you're not a fan of the current storyline, you have to admit one thing. WWE right now is in desperation mode. Yeah, they're in desperation mode. And let me explain why I believe that. You see, WWE right now has to rely on two individuals, well actually three individuals, coming back to help get people's attention. One individual, a lot of them in WWE, as well as fans, thought would be out into at least the Royal Rumble, maybe Survivor Series at the earliest. And of course I'm talking about John Cena. John Cena has been cleared, believe it or not. That's right. Mr. Hustle, Loyalty, and Respect has been cleared to return to the ring, and the reason is this. His elbow injury wasn't as bad as they thought it was. Basically, it was more like taking the fluid out and probably taking out a few little particles or bits and pieces here and there, but it wasn't as bad as they thought it was, and thus enabled a more quicker recovery time. Remember when Cena had that neck injury back in 2008? Same deal. They thought it was bad, thought he was going to be out a lot longer, but instead it wasn't as bad, and he ended up coming back a lot sooner. You see, the one thing, whether you like John Cena or not, you have to admit the guy is a workhorse. He's very dedicated to the WWE, he's very dedicated to this business, whether you like him or not, whether you believe he can wrestle or not, he's very dedicated. And he knew, I'm betting basically my $45 that I'm going to spend next month for Survivor Series, I'm betting that $45 that he pretty much knew he was going to be called back a lot sooner. And wouldn't you know, he was. He was called back sooner. According to reports, it was pretty much known days before Raw that he was going to be making his in-ring return. And what do you know? They put him in a non-Hell in the Cell match against Del Rio for the World Championship at Hell in the Cell, which is pretty cool. And if he ends up winning, hey, whether you like John Cena or not, he at least can bring some legitimacy to the world title. And when you think about it, it will actually bring the world title into the mainstream of the storylines. Because let's not forget, when we went into SummerSlam, storyline-wise, it was pretty much confirmed by Vince McMahon, and thus pretty much, I guess you could say, confirmed after SummerSlam, after Daniel Bryan won, that Vince, Stephanie, and Triple H do not want either Daniel Bryan or John Cena to be champion. And to me, this is probably the best way you could bring the world title into the mainstream and give it some meaning again by having John Cena be one of the top champions. Could it lead to a unification match down the line? Maybe not. Maybe not, but storyline-wise, it would be great. It would be, in reality, good for business to have two of your top babyfaces as your champions of your company. As your WWE champion in the case of Daniel Bryan, and as your world champion in the case of John Cena. Now, John Cena's return is not the only thing that shows that, John Cena's return soon. Okay, hold on. John Cena returning sooner than people expected is not the only thing that proves WWE's in desperation mode right now. You see, they could have easily let John rest another month or so and brought him back to Survivor Series, but they didn't. Another thing that shows you they're in desperation mode is Shawn Michaels, Heartbreak Kid. Shawn Michaels was scheduled to be part of this Daniel Bryan versus Corporation storyline deal, but I don't think he was expected to be part of it this soon. But again, this is all about desperation mode. It's all about being in desperation mode. That is why they brought Shawn in a lot sooner than probably expected. And then the third individual that has yet to make their return, but probably is going to be making their return very soon, is Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon will be making his return, and according to numerous sources, it's rumored he'll be returning as a babyface to oppose Triple H and Stephanie. Again, this is all being done, these returns are being done a lot sooner than normal or than scheduled, because the WWE right now is in desperation mode. I mean, you can even say that the match between Big Show and Triple H that's going to happen either at Hell in the Cell, inside the cell, or it's going to happen at Survivor Series. You can say this. That feud, that storyline is happening, and that feud is going to culminate with that match for a reason, and that reason a lot sooner than probably scheduled, or a lot sooner than they were hoping for, is going to happen because they're in desperation mode. That's what it is. They're in desperation mode, and here's why they're in desperation mode. 2 months in a row, they've had shitty outcomes. Excuse my language, God. Excuse my language, Lord. Please forgive me. But they have had crappy, I should say, I correct myself, crappy outcomes either after the pay-per-view or during the pay-per-view or at the conclusion of it. They've had crappy outcomes. Night of Champions. Daniel Bryan beats Randy Orton, becomes champion. What happens the next night? Daniel Bryan gets stripped because he's basically set up by Triple H and referee Scott Armstrong to take the fall for a fast count, or take the blame for a fast count supposedly in his favor. Okay. That's one crappy ending to which ended up in a lot of people being not only pissed off, but demanding from their cable companies, demanding refunds basically from their cable companies for being ripped off, for being gypped, for having to spend $45 to $55 for a pay-per-view where you thought you were going to have a legitimate champion at the end, but then it's taken away from you on the post-Night of Champions edition of Raw. And then, to top that off, you have the conclusion of Battleground and the WWE Championship there. You have Big Show as a part of his storyline against where he's feuding with Triple H, obviously, and Stephanie. You have Big Show coming down, pulling the referee out, knocking out Daniel Bryan, and then pulling out the referee again, which happened to be Scott Armstrong again, the corporate referee, if you will, pulling him out, knocking him out, and then getting in the ring and knocking Randy Orton out, and thus no champion. And again, fans are upset, and you have fans in the arena itself calling BS on the ending, calling out for refunds, and apparently, according to certain people, those that have demanded refunds again from the cable companies are getting them because of because of the outcome. And again, this is just another proving point WWE's in desperation mode, because now they're getting the backlash from the fans. The fans are basically saying, look, we're sick and tired of this. You want us to spend $45 or $55 on these pay-per-views, and you damn well give us a proper outcome without any BS. So that is why WWE is going all out, if you will, and making their Hell in the Cell pay-per-view at the end of this month, on the last Sunday of this month, a star-studded event. That's why they're doing it, because they're in desperation mode. They're desperate for buy rates, they're desperate for ratings. And another reason they're desperate for ratings, ladies and gentlemen, is the obvious fact. They're going up against the NFL this year. Once again, they're going up against the NFL. Buy rate, Sunday night wise, even though it's once, or in the case of October, or in the case of this month, October, they're going up against Sunday Night Football twice a month. They went up against it this past Sunday with Battleground, and they're going to go up against it on the last Sunday of this month as well. On the last Sunday of this month as well. So you got 2 Sundays in this month that are 2 pay-per-views. Basically, a lot of people have dubbed just glorified, not everybody has dubbed, but I would dub glorified in your house pay-per-views, are going up against Sunday Night Football. And it's not just the pay-per-views this month or even next month or last month that's going up against Sunday Night, that the WWE is having trouble getting buy rates for, because they're going up against Sunday Night Football and some marquee matchups there. You also have Monday Night Raw going up against Monday Night Football and the marquee matchups there, as well as Dancing with the Stars on ABC. And unfortunately, there's a lot of fans, believe it or not, that would, excuse me, that would rather take the remote controls, if you will, and instead of saying, okay, I'm going to order Hell in a Cell, or I'm going to order Battleground, or whatever, instead they'd rather say, I'm not going to spend money, I'll just download the torrent later, and I'm going to watch Sunday Night Football instead. And the same thing with Monday nights. It's like, people have the remotes in their hands, and they're like, you know what, I'll just DVR Raw, and I'm going to watch Dancing with the Stars, or I'm going to watch Monday Night Football, because those are more interesting than what's going on Raw, and I could just pretty much watch what happened on Raw later. That's what they're doing. And WWE is in that desperation mode right now, to where they can't afford to lose that viewership. They can't afford to lose those ratings. They can't afford to lose those buy rates. I mean, heck, you have reports behind the scenes that Vince McMahon himself, reality-wise, behind the scenes, is pissed off at this storyline. Is pissed off at this Stephanie Triple H storyline. So it's, so when you have that being reported as well, it kind of tells you WWE right now is in a desperate mode, is in a desperate situation, to where they have no choice but to do what they're doing for Hell in a Cell, whether you like it or not. Whether you want to admit that John Cena was probably not as hurt as expected and is coming back a lot sooner, whether you want to admit that or, applaud it or whatever, or hate it, you have to admit what everybody's been saying about Cena and what everybody would say about Shawn Michaels. Their presence brings ratings. Their presence brings viewership, and in the case of a pay-per-view, brings buy rates. That's why it's being done. That's why these things are being done. You may not like the fact that John Cena is going for the world title, but again, like I said, if he wins it, he'll finally bring some meaning to it, like some people have been pointing out, and maybe even bring it to the mainstream, to where, let's say just in case Daniel Bryan ends up becoming WWE champion, you have your 2 top babyfaces who the corporation, or this administration, if you will, despises and doesn't want to be champion. All of a sudden, you have those 2 individuals on top of the WWE. So, again, the reason for what's happening in the Hell in a Cell, with the return of Cena, with the involvement of HBK as special referee, with the possible return of Vince McMahon soon, with the upcoming Big Show Triple H match looming over everything soon, the reason this is all happening is because WWE's in desperation mode. You see, WWE knows that they can do good. WWE has proven during this PG-13 era, if you will, PG era, PG-13 era, that they can produce a good product. They can produce good storylines. They can produce good quality Raws and SmackDowns and main events and NXTs and pay-per-views. They know they can do that, but right now they're in a situation, as I mentioned, that they can't do that. But right now they're in a situation to where the fans are turning against them, asking for refunds, tuning into other shows like Monday Night Football and Dancing with the Stars, are not even considering spending money on the pay-per-views anymore because of what's going on, because of the BS that's going on almost every week. And they're sick of it. And that is what's put WWE in desperation mode. It's not because someone like Daniel Bryan can't draw. The guy can draw. There's no doubt about it. He can draw as a wrestler. Why do you think the crowd is behind him? He can draw. He's got fans behind him. He's got the universe behind him. But the thing is, WWE right now, it's not good enough. It's not good enough in the eyes of WWE to continue with the storyline as it is. To go forward as they were going to originally go forward as scheduled. They can't do it. They gotta basically dig. They basically gotta dig. Basically, they gotta call up. They basically gotta get on the. They basically gotta get on the phone a lot sooner than they were planning and say, John, we need you. We know you're going to be cleared a lot sooner, but we're going to need you a lot sooner. And then call up and say, Sean, we're going to need you to be involved in the storyline a lot sooner than we were expecting. So, they got that. So basically, they got this situation right now to where they're doing whatever it takes to please the fans, not appease them, but please the fans and get the fans back on the side. To get the fans to fork out that $45 to $55 for Hell in a Cell. To get fans to tune in to Raw to see what happens next. To get them to tune in to SmackDown to see what happens next. See, that's why this is happening. Because WWE's in desperation mode. You may not want to admit it, but it's true. They're in desperation mode. And again, they got the talent. They got the talent. They got CM Punk. They got Daniel Bryan. They got the Shield. They have the talent to do good stuff with it. They're pushing Cody Rhodes. Believe it or not, they're pushing Goldust now. Even during his short term. They have the talent. They just don't have that momentum anymore because people are turning their backs on them. The fans are turning their backs on them because of the BS. See, all the WWE Universe and the fans, in my opinion, want is a clear-cut finish to a pay-per-view. No BS, no screw jobs, no overturnings the following night. Just a clean-cut finish. That's all they want. That's all they want. And pretty much after weeks of the administration, if you will, dominating over the likes of the roster, dominating over the likes of Daniel Bryan, fans are like, oh yeah, you can now suddenly have the roster, be fed up and turn again and basically stand up to the administration. But what happens? On the following SmackDown and Raw? After that first time, the whole roster said enough's enough. What happened? They got punished. That's what happened. That's what happened. They got punished. Storyline-wise. I mean, yeah, for the past few weeks, if not the past months, you've been giving fans on Raw in attendance and watching at home, you've been giving them some decent endings to where the babyfaces are basically triumphant or standing triumphant. But in between then and there, it's like it's mostly at times heel dominated. It's mostly heel dominated, except for maybe either the beginning or either the middle or the end, and that's it. A majority of Raw and SmackDown at times is heel dominated. And fans are getting sick and tired of it. They want a balancing out. They want a balancing out. And again, that's another reason they're turning their backs. They don't want domination from one side. They want a balancing out. That's what they want. You know, and again, WWE has the talent there. They have the talent pool. Thinned out or not, they have the talent pool. They have the Wyatt family. They have the Shield. They have CM Punk. They have Daniel Bryan. They have Cody Rhodes. They have Goldust. You know, they have Damian Sandow. They have Del Rio. You know, they have what it takes to get the job done. It's just more along the lines of getting it done when the time counts. And depending on those you know could carry the ball and score for you constantly, time after time after time. But again, because they're not doing that, because they're not pushing certain talent and giving certain talent an opportunity to shine, and balancing out certain situations like storylines of babyface and heel, where it's 50-50, and having clean-cut finishes on pay-per-views, especially when it comes to championship matches, WWE right now is in that desperation mode of, you know, we've got no choice but to bring Cena back a lot sooner. We have no choice but to bring HBK into the storyline sooner than expected. We've got no choice but to bring Vince McMahon into the storyline a lot sooner than expected. So, you know, we have no choice but to, you know, fast forward the matchup between Big Show and Triple H, possibly at Hell in a Cell or whenever, a lot sooner than expected. It's because they're in desperation mode. You know, and this is something WWE wouldn't be in if they didn't constantly do the BS that they did. It wouldn't, you know, this is something that I pointed out right after SummerSlam. I mean, I enjoyed SummerSlam. I did. It was one of the better SummerSlams I've ever seen. But here's the problem. WWE wouldn't have put themselves in this situation if they wouldn't go out and rehash the Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Corporation storyline over again and put Daniel Bryan in the role of Austin, but instead with the roles reversed to where instead of like Austin, well, Austin usually would get the upper hand, you have Daniel Bryan getting dominated week after week after week until the go home edition of Raw before Night of Champions. Only then now have you started to allow him and other babyfaces like Big Show and several others get the upper hand on the administration. But because you did that, because WWE did that, and to top it all off, because you strip him of the title 24 hours later, WWE because they stripped him storyline-wise of the title 24 hours later, you basically have the WWE in a situation they wouldn't have had themselves in had they not pulled this BS. Had they not pulled this BS of stripping the title and basically having the role of Austin be portrayed by Daniel Bryan, but have it reversed to where for the first few weeks until the go-home edition of Raw before Night of Champions, you had him literally beat down into a bloody pulp almost. Well, not bloody, but literally beaten down to a pulp. So, again, WWE has no one but themselves to blame for the situation they've put themselves in. They have no one but themselves to blame for the fact that they got to bring in Shawn Michaels into the storyline a lot sooner than expected. They got to bring Vince McMahon into the storyline a lot sooner than expected. They got to bring John Cena back into action a lot sooner than expected, even though he was probably going to come back sooner anyway, maybe Survivor Series. But they got to bring him back at Hell in a Cell. Oh, to compete for the world title. It's all because WWE's not doing the right things. They're not pushing the right buttons. They're not saying, hey, let's push this individual, and let's push this individual even just momentarily or temporarily until our main guys come back. And maybe this person that we push temporarily might be a breakout star. Maybe we could make him a main eventer. You see, WWE has no one but themselves to blame for the situation they put themselves in, and for the fact that they've got to do what they've got to do a lot sooner than expected. So, again, WWE has no one but themselves to blame for the desperation mode they're in right now. No one but themselves. I know that some people in backstage at WWE and some within the offices of WWE in Stamford, Connecticut, they realize that, they could have more viewers. They could have more buy rates, even with the situation right now as it is. If they were a little more, if they didn't have so many restrictions placed upon them, if they had less restrictions and were able to let loose a little bit more than normal, then they probably realize they would have a lot more viewers. They would have a lot more buy rates if they didn't have so many restrictions. If they had less restriction, if they were less restricted and given an opportunity to just let loose a little bit in the creative writing, and maybe even let the superstars have a say in what goes on, and maybe let the superstars just be themselves, and let the superstars not have to work off a script or a promo. Just say what they're going to say right then and there. Just basically do what a Cena does. Do what a CM Punk does. Just if they would have worked with the superstars to do that, as well as to let the superstars be like that, to where they could just speak their mind in character, if you will, just say what they feel to help advance the storyline, then that will help the viewership. That will help the buy rates. I mean, you take a look at the restrictions right now. They're restricted by the fact that they're associated with so many outside sponsors, like Be a Star and the reading programs, and the Susan G. Coleman fight against breast cancer. Find a cure for breast cancer. These are all good things to be associated with, but it's because of these associations, good as they are to be involved in, it's what's holding the WWE back. And I believe, in my honest opinion, that there are those backstage at WWE, not just superstars and divas, but road agents, producers, directors. There's people within Stamford, in the offices of the Stamford, Connecticut, that all believe that if they were not so restricted, that if they had just a little bit more freedom, to let loose a little bit with their storylines and with their creative writing when it comes to storyline, let loose a little bit and allow maybe the superstars and divas to do their own promos without, do their own in-ring or on-camera promos without a script or something like that, that perhaps they would have more viewership and ratings. They would have more buy rates, because basically they'd be giving the WWE universe what they've been really wanting, and that's a WWE that's not so restricted. Yes, still support certain causes, but tell these certain causes, look, we're gonna work out some kind of compromise and say, hey, look, we're gonna probably be a little edgy at times, and if you want us to, we'll put a parental guidance warning before the show saying some material may not be suitable for all people, for all viewers. Discretion is advised. It's as simple as that. But again, I honestly believe that those backstage at WWE events, Raw and SmackDown and pay-per-views, those in the offices at WWE feel that way too. I think they realize they could have more viewers, more buy rates and ratings if they would do that. But because of the restrictions they have right now, because of the BS